Good morning once again, everyone. I'm ever so thankful that y'all could join me once again. Today we're going to be focused on Genesis 35. We left off yesterday in Genesis 34 with the pillaging of Shechem by which was led by the two sons of Jacob, Simeon and Levi. Today we're going to be hearing a little bit about Reuben, the oldest. Now those three are important, and we'll get to that here in a minute. First, let's just take a look at where we're going to be heading today, where Jacob is. Jacob he's moving away from Shechem because he fears for his life that they're now going to be attacked. So he's being called down to Bethel, the place where God wanted him to go all along. And God said unto Jacob, Arise, go up to Bethel, and dwell there, and make there an altar unto God that appeared unto thee when thou fleddest from the face of Esau thy brother. 20+ years before this, whenever he fled from Esau, he wound up at Bethel, and he had his first encounter with God there. And God's calling him to come back to that. This is a great chapter of revival, and we'll find that with any Christian. You'll see that once that you first meet God, you're just so enlightened by the entire experience, and then most of us fall into a worldly way of kind of backsliding, and then the more and more terrible things that happen, it seems as though whenever you like the prodigal son, you come to yourself and you say, what am I doing? Then you come back and there's this other rapturous revival that happens, and it's just like you have come back to your first love, as Jesus says in Revelation 2. Then Jacob said unto his household, and to all that were with him, Put away the strange gods that are among you, and be clean, and change your garments. This is such a good example to fathers of families. The head of families should take a very good lesson from this chapter. Once that Jacob experiences his revival, the family is to follow after him, or else they deal with him immediately. He says, no, put them all away, all the strange gods. Now do keep in mind how the strange gods that were brought from Laban, Padanaram, if you will, the strange gods were brought by Rachel, whom he loved more than he did anyone else. Just keep that in mind. So these strange gods, it would have been Rachel's influence that passed along all these strange gods that others could have started worshiping. You see how far that they were backslidden? And now all of a sudden he comes back. God enlightens him once again, and he says, and whenever I say enlighten, I mean it's just a revival. He just has a revival. I'm not saying he got saved again, but there are many studies on this one topic that I'm getting on right here. That if the fathers of families, if the father goes to church, whenever daddy goes to church, most of the time everybody goes to church. That is the responsibility of the father. It is to lead the family. Here's from this article. In short, if a father does not go to church, no matter how faithful his wife's devotions are, only one child in 50 will become a regular worshiper. If a father does go regularly, regardless of the practice of the mother, between 2/3 and 3/4 of their children will become churchgoers, regular and irregular. So to all the men that believe all they're supposed to do is make the money and pay all the bills, yeah, that's one side of what you're supposed to do, but you are also the spiritual leader of your family. You are the one, bring up a child in the way that he should go, and when he is old, he shall not depart from it. You are to lead them into a spiritual life, whereas their blood may be on your hands at the end of it. And I've seen many, many fathers not take any of this seriously. You should. And let us arise and go to Bethel, and I will make there an altar. He's talking to his family. And let us arise, and I will make thee an altar unto God, who answered me in the day of my distress, and was with me in the way which I went. And they gave unto Jacob all the strange gods which were in their hand, and all their earrings which were in their ears. And Jacob hid them under the oak which was by Shechem. So they're loading up, getting ready to leave, and all of a sudden he's saying, we do not even step foot near Bethel until we get rid of all these strange gods. And I did read commentary on these earrings. It wasn't a bad thing to wear earrings, nor is it now. But these earrings apparently they were used in pagan rituals. They would wear all kinds of different jewelry in order to worship their gods. And so he takes away those. And they journeyed, and the terror of God was upon the cities that were round about them, and they did not pursue after the sons of Jacob. So God had apparently terrified their surrounding enemies. This was a dangerous thing that God was telling Jacob whenever he said, remain in Canaan, even go just to Bethel and such. What most people's natural instinct would be was to flee, get away from Canaan, get just as far away from all the neighbors of Shechem as possible. But God says, nope. He says, go right to where I told you. And God dealt with their enemies. They didn't have to. So Jacob came to Luz, which is in the land of Canaan, that is Bethel, he and all the people that were with him. And he built there an altar and called the place El Bethel, because there God appeared unto him when he fled from the face of his brother. I wonder if he looked for those two stones that he had set up, in which he used for pillars, for pillows, whenever he first had the vision of Jacob's ladder 20 years before. I wonder if he looked for those. I wonder if they were still there. But Deborah, Rebekah's nurse, died, and she was buried beneath Bethel under an oak, and the name of it was called Allon Bacuth. This nurse that they're talking about, we believe that it's the same nurse that came back with Rebekah whenever she came back with Isaac's servant from Haran. And so we're believing that this nurse, Deborah, she was very important to the family. They buried her near Bethel, and Jacob and them, whenever they came upon it, they found this place, which this is called the Oak of Weeping. But other studies that I've looked into, they said that this nurse may have also have wound up in Jacob's camp as well. It's possible, but I highly doubt it. And God appeared unto Jacob again when he came out of Padanaram, and blessed him. And God said unto him, thy name is Jacob, thy name shall not be called any more Jacob, but Israel shall be thy name. And he called his name Israel. God is reminding Jacob of the blessings that he had. I mean, Jacob may have not needed reminding, but there's a reason why God did it. He probably did need reminding, or at least encouragement. God is very good at encouraging. And we believe, according to my research, is that this was Christ again. And God said unto Jacob that he actually appeared to him bodily. He appeared to him in bodily form, and we'll see why just right here in a second. And God said unto him, I am God Almighty, be fruitful and multiply. A nation and a company of nations shall be of thee, and kings shall come out of thy loins. And the land which I gave Abraham and Isaac, to thee I will give it, and to thy seed after thee will I give the land. And God went up from him in the place where he talked with him. This is why we believe that it was Jesus once again, because just as what happened in Penuel, we're seeing that he's seen but Penuel the face of God. I seen God face to face. He's seeing God face to face once again. We already said that was Jesus back then. This is Jesus right here. This is the verse that tells us this was Jesus and not just the Father speaking to him from heaven. And God went up from him. He went up from him in the place where he talked with him. So he actually went up. And we know that the Father is always up. It's just another clarification that Jesus is the mediator between God and man. I believe that's a perfect verse to show it. And Jacob set up a pillar in the place where he talked with him, even a pillar of stone, and he poured a drink offering thereon, and he poured oil thereon. You'll see later, whenever Paul in 2 Timothy is about to die, he says, "And now is my blood being poured upon the altar as a type of sacrifice," which is much like this drink offering used right here. Drink offerings are mentioned later on as well, a couple of times. And Jacob called the name of the place where God spake with him Bethel. And once again, Bethel is, the meaning of it is house of God. And they journeyed from Bethel, and there was but a little way to come to Ephrath, which is Bethlehem Ephrathah. And Rachel travailed, and she had hard labor. She was pregnant. She was about to give birth. And it came to pass, when she was in hard labor, that the midwife said unto her, "Fear not, thou shalt have this son also." And it came to pass, as her soul was in departing, for she died, that she called his name Benoni, but his father called him Benjamin. Benoni means son of my weeping, but Jacob changed it to Benjamin, son of my right hand. So there's a couple of little notes that I want to state about this death of Rachel. Rachel, whenever she began to see her older sister Leah having Jacob's sons, she just yells at Jacob. I mean, you can just read it and tell it. She says, "Jacob, give me children or I die." And now you kind of see the irony of this, and how she actually did die because of a child, or because of giving birth to a child. And we see her attitude right here, wanting to call his name Benoni, son of my weeping. Well, that actually points to a later prophecy given by Jeremiah concerning the birth of Christ. Jeremiah 31:15. Thus saith the Lord, a voice was heard in Ramah, lamentation and bitter weeping. Rachel, weeping for her children, refused to be comforted for her children because they were not. This is pointing back to when Rachel was crying over her child, and then it's also pointing to whenever Christ was born and the slaughter of the innocents. So it's prophetic, it's looking backwards, and it's pointing forwards to what's going to happen. So this prophecy's already came to pass in the slaughter of the innocents, whenever Herod ordered all the young males under 2 years of age to be slaughtered. And Rachel died and was buried in the way to Ephrath, which is Bethlehem. The name Ephrathah means fruitful, and Bethlehem means house of bread. One last note on this death of Rachel. Right after this revival at Bethel, we see how the one woman, the only individual that we're told comes out with Jacob with strange gods, with false gods. And remember what Jacob had said to Laban. He said, let whoever took your idols die. They'll surely die. So it was almost a prophetic saying by Jacob, and which was later fulfilled. But it's very strange in how God removed Rachel from Jacob's life immediately after this great revival. Not only did the strange gods go into the ground at Shechem, but right after the revival, Rachel goes in to the ground. And we still have Rachel's tomb to this day. Here is a picture of Rachel's tomb about, I think it's around 70, 80 years ago, quite a few decades back. And right here is it today, heavily fortified. I guess because they're so afraid that people are going to try to destroy it. But yeah, this is the place. Here are the rabbis inside of it within Rachel's tomb. And Jacob set up a pillar upon her grave. That is the pillar of Rachel's grave unto this day. Now notice this. Right after Rachel dies, And Israel journeyed and spread his tent beyond the Tower of Adar. We just seen in the very last verse how he's referred to as Jacob. Okay, so Jacob builds this pillar for Rachel, but once the Rachel's out of the picture, Israel journeyed and spread his tent beyond the Tower of Adar. And it came to pass, when Israel dwelt in that land, that Reuben went and lay with Bilhah, his father's concubine. And Israel heard it. Now the sons of Jacob were 12. Bilhah was Rachel's maidservant that she gave to Jacob for a concubine. She had 2 of Jacob's sons. And once that Rachel died, Bilhah was no longer a maidservant, as far as I know. So she was kind of just walking about, and, she just a woman in the camp. And Reuben is the oldest of the sons, and he's frolicking with one of Jacob's concubines. So we see how the sons go like this: Reuben, Simeon, Levi, and Judah. These 3 sons, within the past 2 chapters, have just become incredible disappointments for Jacob and embarrassment to his family. So we see Judah being the one in whom Christ comes through. Now we know that Judah's not perfect, but by the end of Jacob's life, Judah is the first one in which is worthy of being blessed by Jacob, and he's greatly blessed. We'll get to that here in future chapters. But Jacob blesses Judah above all the rest of them, and we see that that's the one in which God has chosen to bring Christ through. The sons of Leah: Reuben, Jacob's firstborn, and Simeon and Levi, and Judah and Issachar and Zebulun. The sons of Rachel: Joseph and Benjamin. And the sons of Bilhah: Rachel's handmaid, Dan and Naphtali. And the sons of Zilpah: Leah's handmaid, Gad and Asher. These are the sons of Jacob, which were born to him in Padanaram. And Jacob came unto Isaac his father, unto Mamre, unto the city of Arba, which is Hebron, where Abraham and Isaac sojourned. And the days of Isaac were 180 years, 180 years old. We're not told about any great meeting between Isaac and Jacob. It's probably because Isaac was just so old. He was really old by the time that Jacob had left. Now this is 2 decades later, a little over 2 decades later, so he's probably not really sure about where he is at this time. And Isaac gave up the ghost and died, and was gathered unto his people, being old and full of days, and his sons Esau and Jacob buried him. So Isaac dies, Rachel dies, Benjamin is born. A revival happens within the camp. They get rid of their strange gods. This is a whole new beginning, and I don't think that it is any coincidence that Isaac dies, leaving Jacob to run the camp now. Because first, the strange gods are gotten rid of. Benjamin is born immediately after the very last fulfillment of the 12 tribes comes along. Benjamin. Immediately after that, Rachel's gotten rid of. I don't think that she was a godly influence at all. And then he comes down, says his final goodbye to Isaac, and Isaac dies. So now it's just Jacob with a full revival, all 12 sons, good wives, yet or a good wife, and he's having problems with now his, still a little trouble within the camp, very dysfunctional family, but at least now it's looking like it's on a better note. And tomorrow we'll pick up on the lineage of Esau, and we'll try to get into 36, 37 tomorrow. God of all peace, mercy, and love be with you all. Amen.